What happens when you take a love of food, a passion for culture, and a deep knowledge of cannabis and you toss them all into one bowl? You get Bite Me, the podcast that explores the intersection of food, culture, science, and cannabis and helps cooks make great edibles at home. I am your host, Margaret, a certified ganjier, TCI certified cannabis educator, and I believe your kitchen is the best dispensary you'll ever have. Together, we'll explore the stories, the science, and the sheer joy of making safe, effective, and unforgettable edibles at home. So preheat your oven and get ready for a great episode. Let's dive in. Welcome to Cannabis Confessions, an exclusive series brought to you by Bite Me, the show about edibles, and the Bite Me Cannabis Club. This is the place where cannabis lovers like you come together to share their personal journey with this remarkable plant. And in each episode, you'll hear real stories from members of the Bite Me Cannabis Club and listeners of the show, exploring their first encounters with cannabis, how it shaped their lives, their favorite ways to enjoy it. And today, I welcome Madison, also known as Free Nugs, and we touch on the tolerance break that we just both did together and the impacts of that break. These conversations are honest, inspiring, and uniquely personal. And this series is all about connection and community. So without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Madison. All right, we are live and we are doing a Cannabis Confessions today. And I am joined by a certain special someone, but maybe I'll let you introduce yourself. Let us know what your name is, what you'd like to go by, if you have any pronouns you like to use.
My name is Madison, aka Free Nugs. If you guys are, have heard me ask a bunch of questions on High on Homegrown, and I live in Maine, vacation land, New England, and yeah, that's me.
So you have a climate very similar to my own, being in Maine, and it's a beautiful sunny day today here. And is cannabis legal where you live in Maine?
Yes, cannabis is legal both medicinally and recreationally. I think it was 2016 or 2014 when it became recreational around here. It's been a while, I'm pretty sure.
Is that one of the earlier states then? Like, I can't remember how long California's been legal for, but you've been legal then before Canada even.
Let me just look that up because I hate being wrong.
We all do, don't we? There's
Yeah.
almost no excuse for it anymore because when we were younger, at least for me.
2017.
Okay, that might have been the same year as Canada. Well, now I'm looking like I don't know what I'm talking about either, but it's been a minute.
It's been a while for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure, as you know, it's pretty nice to be in a legal jurisdiction. You don't have to look over your shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
So to get into it today with our Cannabis Confessions, can you share the story of your first experience with cannabis and maybe how that's evolved over time?
Yeah. My first experience was in a bedroom with a group of friends in high school. We were just hanging out, and I was in one room hanging out with the dudes in the other room. And then there was a bunch of, female friends in the other room. And I went in, they were like, we're smoking weed. I was like, okay, I was a very naive teenager. And, so I was just sitting there. We were just hanging out, listening to music. So I just wanted to chill with them. And they were like, do you want to try it? And I was like, I guess. I've never tried it before. And, eventually we did. We all had a great time. And I ended up just hanging out with those guys more and more. And we just getting high, laughing, listening to music, and just having a good time. And that was my first encounter with cannabis.
And sort of the rest is history. I mean, that sounds like a pretty classic first experience. You're hanging out with your friends, somebody has weed, and you decide to partake.
Exactly, for sure.
Now, if I heard that correctly, was it the women, like the women that you were hanging out with, were they the ones smoking cannabis?
Yeah.
Oh, and the guys weren't?
No, they were more interested in playing the video games and doing the computers.
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't know why I find that interesting, but
they were more of a rebellious type, the females.
Yeah, well, you don't have to tell me. I was smoking cannabis in high school too, but it just seemed like a lot of the guys were smoking weed, and maybe I just fell into that group. And I mean, there was obviously other like girlfriends that I had that were smoking weed too. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting because I don't know why I find that interesting. I just do.
I was also a very sheltered kid, so like I would have believed that nobody smoked unless they like were like, hey, smoking it right in front of me, and I'm also very gullible. So if you tell me one thing, I'm probably gonna believe it.
Right. Well, I was pretty sheltered too because I grew up in a very religious household. So, cannabis was definitely the devil's lettuce as far
The
as
devil's
my
lettuce,
parents were
yeah.
concerned. I mean, they never referred to it as such, but they wouldn't have had that kind of lingo. But still, it was definitely frowned upon. And I smoked a lot of hash in high school. Every time I came home, like it still is to this day, one of my favorite snacks is a peanut butter and honey sandwich. And
Ooh.
I don't eat those very often anymore, but I prefer honey over jam or jelly. But every time I would come home from being out with my friends and I was having that snack, my mom always assumed I was high because I was eating something sweet, and she had joined some support group for parents of kids who smoked weed.
Oh, geez.
And I mean, she was right 50% of the time, probably, but
Right, but it
no,
also makes you feel like crap because you're like, Mom, I'm not high. I
no,
just
she never
want my
believed me.
peanut butter and honey sandwich, you
Yeah,
know?
because I also grew up in a household where we had like nothing sugary or sweet because they were all like, we were like an ingredient household. And so that was like literally my only option. We never had any sweet snacks. They waited until after my sister and I moved out of the house before they started buying real treats. So, peanut butter and honey was like the only sweet thing. And I do have a sweet tooth. So, yeah. But
I do too.
yeah. So now, I mean, obviously, you must have enjoyed cannabis when you first experienced it back in the day. How has your relationship with cannabis evolved since then?
Well, through my life, cannabis was at first a social thing, hanging out with my friends and whatnot. But for me and my mental health is why I chose to consume more because I struggle really bad with manic depression. And when most people attribute depression, they think of just like a feeling sad all the time or for no reason. And unless you actually know somebody with depression, you never really understand it. And it's not just a feeling of sad, it's feeling numb. It's feeling like you can't enjoy your everyday life because everything's just dull. And to me, everything's just gray every day. And it affects my thoughts and my motivation, and it can impact my energy levels on some days. And throughout the tolerance break is when I first started to recognize all of these things. And so my relationship with cannabis has been evolving the most in the past probably 3 months because in December I've been using it for over 15 years. I've been using it heavily for that long. So it's just starting to evolve in a better point now because I'm starting to use it and recognize it for for more reasons than what I was before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Then maybe you can like expand on that a little bit. And I do understand what you're saying too when it comes to depression, that if you haven't known somebody or you haven't experienced it yourself, it's really tough to understand it. And I did have a partner in the past who had undiagnosed depression for a long time. And it was really hard because it's not something that I typically deal with. And it was really hard to understand sort of what he was going through. It took me a long time to really understand that how it was affecting him, but it did
Yeah.
affect him a lot. And I used to take it kind of personally because I just didn't really get it. But eventually I did learn that it can be really debilitating. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're kind of exploring more about using cannabis like intentionally and more maybe medically. Would
Right.
that be accurate?
So even though I do not have a medical card, and there's reasons behind that I won't go into, I use it quote recreationally, but to me it's more of a medical thing that I have been using throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not saying that it's a coping skill or a coping mechanism as much as we all like to use it as a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a functional one, but I've been microdosing since the tolerance break,
Okay.
and I've noticed a tremendous difference in my overall mental health just microdosing, because another thing that we all have to break the stigma on is just because we ingest or consume cannabis doesn't mean that we're always high or we're always stoned. And I
Right.
hate that so much, that just because you smell like weed, people think that you're just like numbed out of it and can't function. And that's not what it is at all. So um, just being able to use it freely and I've been experimenting with having it in my system, but not having to be stoned all the time.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And also, when you mentioned that you're using it probably more medically, even though you're not accessing a medical system per se. I mean, a lot of people would think that all cannabis use is medical to some degree because,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe you're thinking you're using it recreationally, but if I'm using it in the evening to unwind in lieu of a glass of wine, that
Yeah,
could be
and
construed as medical because I'm looking to reduce my cortisol levels, which is
yeah, you're
like
just,
a,
everybody has their something, and I definitely wrote something about that too.
mhm.
But yeah, for sure.
So tell me a bit more about the microdosing because well, so you took part in a community tolerance break with me in January of this year, 2026. Can
Yes.
you talk about your experience and what you learned throughout? And I would like to touch on the microdosing as well because I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, my experience was very eye-opening, and in many ways, it was a test of will and ambition. But most important, I was able to see what my life was like without cannabis for the first time in over 15 years. I smoked almost every day for over 15 years, and I, quote, wasn't feeling high anymore.
Hmm.
And I wasn't recognizing any of the effects of my medicine that I have become so dependent on. And so after learning about the science behind tolerance breaks, I knew that what I needed, and sooner than later, was a tolerance break. And when I listened to your intro about taking a break together, I was like, nope, that's it. We're going in. So, um, and I don't know if this is a good gateway to keep going on mental health.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but one thing to bring up is generational trauma. And during the 70s and 80s, there was a parenting program called Tough Love or something like that, where the parents would literally degenerate their kids in front of others and put them down to make them feel like crap, because the media was force feeding them to do this because it was the right way to raise your kid. And no one was
Really?
allowed to. Yes, I just
So they would
saw this.
publicly like humiliate or insult their children to make them tougher?
Supposedly,
Wow. Okay.
and so that shuts you down, that makes you feel it makes you feel like crap. So it wasn't about the parents and children sitting down to work together for the parents to show the kids how to deal with these everyday problems, because they couldn't handle it themselves back then. And that's why a lot of us are victims of this generational trauma that's kept us all quiet and unaware of what our true emotional well-being is. So coming back to my point is, when you start going to a therapist and working with a mental health specialist, you start to realize disorders like depression, anxiety, bipolar, etc., and different chemical imbalances we all have in our brains. And when you work with a psychiatrist, they prescribe your medications to help you balance the chemical imbalance in your brain to help you be a more functioning adult. So I personally don't believe every psychiatrist is evil and trying to get you hooked on a medicine to be a slave to the system. But if you do start to do some research of what your medicines do for you, then and what they help you accomplish as a functioning human being, then you can do your due diligence and figure out what kind of herbal medicines you can take instead if you wanted to go down that route, which I'm a big fan of. And I have been researching since I quit alcohol almost a year ago. and I quit cigarettes almost 5 years ago. So I think I started all of the plant stuff heavily 5 years ago. And to get off cigarettes, I was smoking more herbal things, not just cannabis. It was mullein is a big one that they put into a lot of them as like
Oh,
the main
interesting.
thing, because
Because
mullein is
isn't
a
that supposed to,
decongestant.
yeah, I was just going to say, I hear that recommended a lot for people who are trying to like get all the icky stuff out of their lungs after
It's a
or
very
anytime.
light, smooth smoke, but it definitely will help you it'll help you hack up any of that phlegm that's stuck in your lungs for sure. When
Oh, interesting.
anybody who smokes cigarettes says, "Oh, I got this really bad cough and I can't get anything up," I go, "Well, have you ever tried smoking mullein?" They're like, "What?" So
So
it's like,
how does okay, you said a lot of things that I really want to touch on.
okay, yeah, sorry,
But
sorry.
as far as mullein goes, like how do you like is that something you can buy already in sort of a cigarette form, or do you buy dried mullein
You
and just roll it
can
up yourself?
both. Yeah, if you go right on Amazon, I know that I don't know the name of the company, but if you look at the packaging, if you type in like herbal cigarettes, it'll show you like a bear paw, and that was the stuff that I got, and they come pre-rolled, or you can get it in a tin where it's like a mixture,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can roll that up. But you can also take that mixture and brew a tea with it too. So like
Okay.
you don't just have to smoke it; you can get
Right.
it like you can smoke it like that's
Yeah.
the cool thing. So like when I stopped smoking cigarettes, I found all these different things that you could smoke,
Mm-hmm.
because back in ancient druidic times, that's what they did, is they got these benefits from smoking the herbs and figuring that out.
Well, there's
But
also
yeah.
that idea too that you're replacing that like oral fixation. Because as someone who used to smoke as well, I think I quit like maybe 8 years ago at this point, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Like your lungs just feel like shit. And when you're first trying to quit, it's like you're missing something. If you go cold turkey, and something like mullein could sort of be a replacement for that oral fixation that is part of the
Yeah,
habit, right?
yeah,
Yeah. But I
for real.
suppose over time, weaning off the smokable mullein and switching to a tea or something might be wise, because obviously anytime you put something into your lungs, there's, I don't know, some risk, I guess.
I don't ever encourage people to smoke, to be honest. Like that's my personal choice, and that's just, maybe that's just the old man in me, is,
No, we all get older and we all realize that we're not going to live forever. And yeah, because like interestingly, I've talked about this on the podcast already, I think in last week's episode, but my dad was just diagnosed with lung cancer and they caught it really early. So that's a really good thing. But my dad used to smoke, but he quit like 50 years ago. And the type of lung cancer he has is one that's typically associated with smoking. Now, obviously, they can't like make that direct, correlation or
Right,
whatever, because I've also heard that once you quit smoking cigarettes, after a couple of years, your lungs are supposed to regenerate as if you had never smoked
right,
before.
right.
But I mean, it does make you think, obviously. So, yeah. But I
We're
also
all young
wanted,
and stupid once.
oh, God, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the number of dumb things I've done in my own life. But I wanted to touch a little bit too on that emotional regulation, because whether it was through something like that crazy tough love program you were talking about, or I mean, I grew up, like I said already, in a religious household, and I was never really taught things about like around emotional regulation and things like that. And I think that's a really important distinction that you're making. Like, if you grow up without those tools and skills, then life can be really difficult for
It's
sure.
hard for you
And
to show your children how to do those
exactly.
life skills. How
Yeah.
can you show your children to do something that you expect them to do that you're not willing to do yourself?
And if
That's what
you,
it
yeah.
boils down
And
to.
if you've had kids, we've all, like anyone out there listening who's had kids totally understands the toddler who's having an emotional meltdown because they don't know how to regulate their emotions. But we've also experienced that as adults. It took me a long time to really understand, what emotional regulation was, and like recognizing your emotions and talking about them in a way that helped me understand what I was feeling in the moment. And I feel like that's something that we need to talk about more. And therapy is a great space to explore that. But I do understand too that psychiatrists are going to prescribe drugs just the same way that our medical doctors will, because they don't have that understanding of how plant medicines can be a really effective substitute for pharmaceuticals, because they just
I
don't have the
agree.
language and the education around it. So that does mean oftentimes you kind of have to go out there and find people who are doing that, or do your own research and see how you can use these medicines to your advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the microdosing that you were mentioning, because you're obviously talking about how you've used cannabis in the past as a way to sort of manage some of your own, I guess, mental health, and is how microdosing has sort of evolved in your cannabis
So
journey.
right now, I don't have any means of like measuring it out per se.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing is like, if I wake up, I'm not smoking in a whole bowl or anything. I'll just take a hit and I'll hold it for, your 3.5 seconds. I'll exhale and I go, okay. That's the one thing that the tea break has taught me, is a little bit of control. You take that, put it down. You don't need the whole thing. And right now, where I'm also trying to not spend money on my cannabis, I'm trying to grow it myself. Right now, I only have one strain because that's what I grew last year. So that also plays a part into how much you have to microdose, because if you have a different strain that does different effects, you're going to have to microdose differently.
Right.
Everybody's body chemistry is different, and all of these different cannabis strains act differently to every different person. So it's really, really difficult unless you kind of have an idea of how you're going to go about experimenting with it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mutual friend, Smee, who does, FICO and makes his own gummies and capsules and things. And he has a much more precise way to microdose than I would per se.
I would
You
also
know,
venture his tolerance is, from what I understand, much higher than mine. So
and
there's
I
also
also have a
that.
very high
Yeah.
tolerance. I mean, that tea break, um, when I went back, I did end up getting very stoned, but I just, with the microdosing, and I still smoke, I still have that pretty high tolerance. So I guess the microdosing goes into just overall throughout the day, kind of like it's like an all day thing. So I think of it this way: trying to achieve the perfect amount of, not medicated, because I feel like when you use the word medicated, people think sedative.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that one's just a hard thing to describe. um
No, I think maybe if I can sort of unpack what you're trying to say so that I make sure I understand it, is that you are sort of using small doses throughout the day to sort of keep yourself at a certain level, which you find is
right.
which helps with your mental health and your state
Yes,
of
thank
being.
you,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's how I understand what you're saying. And it sounds like to me that from the tolerance break, you were smoking really heavily before you took the break. And from
Right.
what I remember you telling me as well, like you smoked a lot, and then a lot of the times you didn't even really feel high from it. And now
Right. Yeah.
found like a minimum effective dose. So you can like intersperse those doses throughout the day, and you're using less cannabis each time
Right.
and
And I'm
finding
a
that minimum
functioning
effective
human
dose.
being,
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
do things throughout my day and still be I can still be a human.
Right. Yeah.
When do
Yeah.
we start looking at people as, cannabis users as, degenerates instead of as humans?
Well, that's part of the stigma that's taking forever to die. And one of the reasons why I like doing this show, because I've interviewed a lot of people over the years. And one thing I've learned is that there is no one cannabis user. Like they're all over the place. They're everywhere. And they come from all walks of life. So that stigma of the, lazy stoner stereotype or whatever is the furthest thing from the truth. But that's just like the hangover from propaganda. like the
Yeah, so
propaganda
many
era of like,
years of
yeah,
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 just all of the negativity.
yeah, yeah.
Can't stand it.
But I have to say that like I was really impressed with how you managed that tolerance break because you pushed through even when you were finding it really difficult. And so I got to commend you on that because for your first tolerance break in 15 years is no small feat. And you showed up
Yeah, it
every
was
single day,
tough.
even when it was like hard, because I know it was hard for you at some moments. And I just want to commend you for that because it's not easy to do, but you're doing something really positive for yourself and for your health
Thank
and your
you.
family. And yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you were able to like have some ongoing positive impacts from that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
would you do
thank you.
yeah, would you do a tolerance break again?
In October. I would definitely
Okay.
do one in October. I'm never
Yeah.
doing a dry January again.
Was
You
January
know,
just not a good time?
oh my gosh, well the kids are still on school from Christmas
Right.
vacation, and when you
Yes.
take your, your one thing that is making everything better, and they're still right up your butt until the time they go out to school, it's
Yeah,
no,
I forgot
I'm
about
all
that.
set.
I don't have kids in school anymore, so that's not
Yeah.
something I have to deal with. But yeah, that's definitely an added layer of complexity because, yeah, kids can try. I mean, kids are wonderful, but they definitely try your patience on the best of times, especially when they're
I
like home
agree.
all the time. So,
And I
uh,
have I have my hands full because I have three very special boys. One, my youngest is physically disabled, so he has limited maneuverability.
mhm,
My middle child is very, very intelligent, and we think he might be autistic in the way that he is too smart for his own good.
right. Yeah.
Okay, and then I have my oldest who he has a learning disability. He's very hyper ADHD, and he knows what he wants, and he's just not all there at the same time. So
Right.
I have my hands very full, and I also help my wife with the restaurant down the road because she's a manager down there, and so trying to juggle all of these things while taking a tea break was very trying,
Yeah.
to
And it
say
sounds
the
like
least.
your hands are very full. Your life sounds very rich. Um, I can see why
Rich.
January might not be the best time. I've had some people in the club also talk about how they might be interested in taking like shorter tolerance breaks as well. Like I know there's a lot of science behind doing, the month-long tolerance break, but now
Yeah,
that you've done one, maybe you could also consider like a shorter one more
I've
frequently
thought
or
about a
whatever.
2 week break, or trying
Right.
even like a week break, or even just being like, okay, not doing it for like a day or two.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
definitely in my thought process. It's not something that I would not want to try.
Yeah, because I've heard some people say like, maybe they do a couple days a month for a year or something like that, or a week, take a 1 week break every quarter or whatever. Like it doesn't always have to be like all or nothing a whole month long,
Right.
even though there's
Just
obvious
let your
benefits.
brain repair itself a
Yeah,
little bit, because not
yeah,
saying that cannabis is harming our brains, but the our brains have so many receptors, and when the receptors are like, it's kind of like it when something sticks to the receptor, it's done. The receptor's not there anymore. So when you start running out of those receptors, that's when it's like, okay, I think I need to stop this for a little bit so that you can
yeah.
start growing those things back.
Yeah, like you have the receptors, and if you're over consuming, perhaps, or you've been consuming for a while, then your own like internal systems are going to downregulate how much they're producing as well. Like endocannabinoids that the body is producing goes down because you're supplying it with so many external ones.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so
Yeah,
taking that break sort of resets that system so that when you do consume again, you're going to get more benefits from it, which is exactly what happened with you for the month long tolerance break. Now, it sounds like your tolerance is still relatively high, comparatively speaking to someone like me, per se. Do you find that your tolerance is still lower than it was before you started as your microdosing?
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can smoke weed with friends now and feel like, and I think that part of it was recognizing.
Right.
When you don't feel like you're high, you don't recognize that you're high. So
Right.
maybe you are a avid consumer and you smoke so much and you just don't feel high. Well, maybe that's because it's become so regulated to you that you're not recognizing when you are feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's been a big thing now that I've come back, is being able to, when I am taking some days and I'm, you know taking more, uh indulging, when I become
Mhm.
more indulging, I am making sure that I notice when I'm high and I'm not just smoking to smoke, because
Right.
that's a lot of it for me. Is I'm a smoker, and I hate to admit that, but I am, and I just like to smoke. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm not looking to smoke to get high. I think I'm just beyond that point, and I'm going to be looking into some more CBD and other CB, strains to test those out, because where cannabis is right now, it's all bred to be very high potent THC,
Mhm.
and the THC is what I feel is numbing us all out.
Mhm.
So,
I
you
think
know,
you really hit on something there, and I would highly encourage you to check out CBD dominant strains or CBG or like all the other ones that are coming
I
out
want to
now.
try CBV, honestly. The
CBV, I'm not familiar with that
or
one.
what's the ADHD one?
Are
Is it
you thinking
G
THCV? I mean, that was the one I think.
THCV?
Yeah. There's also an appetite suppressant, and maybe that's the one that they're
Maybe
like
that's the one. Yeah.
with
Uh,
attention and focus as well.
they all got so many acronyms.
I know. I was interested in trying that one too, but they're definitely because they're minor cannabinoids. They're harder to find. But you are right that throughout history, most of the cannabis has been grown because it was illegal. If they're going to do it, they might as well make it as potent as fucking
Right.
possible. Because other
As
why
potent and as
risk it?
fast flowering as possible.
Yeah,
Yep.
no one's going to risk their livelihood to grow a plant that's non-intoxicating, which is what your CBD cultivars are. But as someone who consumes a lot of CBD, I definitely recommend it, and I love mixing it with my THC dominant flower. I mean, I guess you can get ratios now too, but um, it's kind of nice to have separate plants sometimes or separate cultivars because then you can mix them
Yeah.
as you choose to do. And I read a book a little while ago. I would love to get her on my show one of these days, but a woman named Miyabi Shields, she's a scientist in the cannabis space, and she's a huge advocate for using blends of THC, CBG, and I think CBD flower because that's how, like, she has a particular blend and she's neurodivergent and, is a big advocate for cannabis around mental health. Yeah, I think
You'll
exploring
have to
that
give
would
me
be,
that info.
yeah,
Because, yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. I
yeah,
am full of neurodivergent.
yeah, yeah. So I think the CBD has a lot of potential to sort of just take your cannabis journey that much farther. And now that you're in a place where it's legal to do that, that's kind of cool too.
For now, allegedly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it. Yeah,
So if you
but
have a recreational market, can you go in and buy CBD flower? Like, although I have to admit, up
I would
here
have
where,
to find a shop that only sold CBD specific. So right now, I only go to like a few places, because
Mhm.
once it went. So first, weed in Maine became medically legal, and then when you started seeing the dispensaries started popping up, all of the weed kind of went what so back in the day when you first got your weed, you had either Mersh or you had Green Bud. Nobody had names for it,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so after the medical dispensaries came out, there was Green Bud everywhere. But to me, you had your Mersh Green Bud and you had your dank or your super fire or whatever you wanted to call it, your good stuff.
Hmm.
And so around here, to me, a lot of the places only have mediocre herb, and maybe I'm just a snob, but so I only go to a few different recreational places because I know what I'm paying for and I know where they grow it, and I'm really super friendly with all the people, and they're very friendly to me, and they'll chat my ear off about their operation. So like it's a very like close to home sort of
It almost
place
sounds
that
like a
I
farm
go.
gate thing.
Kind of,
You guys
yeah.
have farm gate in Maine?
I don't know. I don't even know
Okay.
what Farmgate is.
I think that's just when like cannabis farms can sell like at their place of business.
It
I
you
think there's
must
some
you
of that
must it
in
must be
Canada.
because I know that the place that I'm talking about, it's called Blue Sky, Maine. At
Hmm.
their medical shop, it
Yeah.
also acts as the whole back side of that is their outdoor grow area.
Yeah, I wonder if that's under that kind of umbrella because there's
So
a few
it
places
might
here that
be.
you can do that, which I think is really cool because that's kind of like it's like going to the farmer's market and meeting the people that are growing your food and you're buying the carrots
Exactly.
from them. Like I love
Exactly.
that. But they don't really carry CBD flower that you know of.
Not that I know of,
Right.
no. And
Yeah.
and I when I used to frequent a lot before I started growing my own, and that's the big thing about growing your own is not spending so much money because it's so damn expensive.
Amen.
Um,
Yeah.
um, they never really had like CBD dominant strains because I feel like they with dispensaries, they've got a certain market they're selling to. They're not trying, it's not a medical dispensary. It's a recreational dispensary that I'm going to. I don't have a med card. I don't
Yeah.
have I don't have access to medical prices and medical things that would probably have more of those CBD flowers in their
Right.
shops.
Well, and I suppose there's probably just generally overall like less demand for CBD flower in the shops. And I used to work at a dispensary in my town a few years ago, the first legal one where I live. And we sold CBD flower, and quite a few people came in to buy it, but it was okay. I wouldn't say it was like awesome because I would get CBD flower from a grower friend here in Canada, and that shit was dank. It was so good, and I'd never experienced that in the dispensary. But people still always came in and would be like, "What's the highest potency flower that you have?" And
Yeah,
some of those customers would buy that flower regardless of anything, any other factor. Like it could be a $60 eighth, and they'd be spending that money just because it was high potency.
yeah,
And I think that's
yeah.
sort of a limitation of the legal market as well, because we hear a lot more about like cannabis use disorder and cannabis hyperemesis and all these things. And there's a lot of studies that are talking about this stuff, but there's still skepticism, I think, sometimes from the cannabis community around that. But I don't know if they're considering that the legal market has an imperative to bring new products to the market for people who want high potency products. And so they're getting more and more potent, and you're seeing like vapes and brand new categories that didn't exist before.
Another thing that I have really thought was kind of interesting is when they started getting out of, like, they call it sativa or indica, but now that we know that they're just genus names and it doesn't actually mean that it, like, you could still smoke a sativa dominant and it could still put you into couch like an
Yeah.
indica could.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're also mixed and in between, but they still label them in the dispensaries as a sativa or an indica, like
Yeah.
or the hybrids that they have now.
Which pretty
So
much
I
everything is a hybrid,
when you think
really.
about it, yeah, so one cool thing about the dispensary that I go to, and we got talking about that recreational bud that goes out in Maine has to go through specific testing
Hmm.
by MOFGA, the Maine organization, Maine Organic Farmers Growers Association. Anyway, so but they have to go through so many testings before it can be put on the shelf because there was a grow in Maine that was all it had mold in the weed
Hmm.
and they were selling it. So, yep. So they got tagged, and so now all of it has to be very regulated. And I don't
Yeah.
remember where I was going from there because my ADHD went off the rails. But
Well, we were talking about the high potency products that you see And I suppose also what I'm hearing you
Okay,
say.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. So, I can go into my dispensary and they have on a card what different percentages are in the bud.
Right.
So whenever I go in, I'm not looking at the THC potency that's the number one label that they throw up there. I'm going to go up and I'm going to look at the index card of information that they have on it. And one cool other thing that they have is a binder that has all of their like genetic lineage of all of their seeds that they've grown that they sell personally at the store.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that if you're a more conscious consumer, because that's what the cannabis community needs is more conscious consumers, is to go in and actually look at these different compounds that are in the plant or the strain that you're going to ingest and get the feelings out of that. And it's not just the THC that's gonna do it for you.
100%. And I understand what you're saying too, but like the dispensaries always distinguishing between the different types of flower with like hybrid, sativa, indica, because I think that's like what most people understand right now as far as, how to shop for flower. But then when you look at like the terpenes, a lot of the times they say terpenes is what drives effects. And maybe a lot of sativas have specific types of terpenes, which may be why it's generally speaking more uplifting for
Right, those
most
more
people.
limonene and
Yeah,
other
yeah,
things like that, those uplifting
yeah. Tend
terpenes.
to be more in sativas, but not necessarily. Which is why you also have to like try a bunch of different strains to see what works best for you. Because you could try a limonene dominant sativa that puts you to sleep because that's your unique biology.
Exactly, and
Yeah,
yeah, and that's another thing is working and recognizing your own body chemistry.
yeah.
Yeah, it gets confusing.
It turns out we are all really special snowflakes after all.
Yes.
Yeah, but I love that your dispensary has like the certificate of analysis available for all the flower, and you can look up like lineage and terpenes and compounds and stuff because all that stuff is really informative. And I don't know about you, but in Canada we don't have the ability to like smell the flower before we buy it or even really see it yet. I think they're bringing in clear packaging soon, but in the
Oh,
absence of
interesting.
that, you have to kind of work with the other information that's available to
Right,
you.
yeah.
Yeah. And a lot more
Off to
companies
the
here are
smell descriptors and
yeah. And a lot more companies here are listing like terpenes and the terpene percentages on their packaging as well. From what I remember, I don't like you, I don't buy a lot of flour here anymore because I do grow my own too. But
right.
but yeah, it's that's valuable information that tells people a lot of stuff, you
Yeah, if
know.
you get anything out of me, I would definitely say that watch your consuming because you might think that you're going to get the dankest weed because it's high THC, but maybe that lesser amount that has more of that CBD and will kick your ass heavier than any potent THC would.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all smoked flower that was like 27%, and then you're like, that was okay. And then you smoke something that's 18%, and you're like practically drooling, and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, well, obviously THC percentages don't matter as much as the industry would like us to think it matters. Because I think it's like really easy for them to slap something on a label that says 27%, and then people will buy. But I think as the consumer gets more sophisticated and more educated, then they'll start to demand better,
and
honestly.
that just takes time.
It really does. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who's new to cannabis and they're curious, but maybe they're not sure where to start?
So, as being a person who has totally done this and has done it the peer pressure way, make the experience enjoyable and don't be out doing something with a big crowd of people or don't be in an uncomfortable environment. Close friends, good music, and good vibes, and just let them go at their own pace. Like that's the biggest advice I can go. Let them go the slow route if they want. They want a little more. All right, let them have it. If it's their first time, make it a good time. Don't like make them smoke as much as you, who's been smoking forever,
Right.
smoke that amount with you to the point where they're having a panic attack. They don't know where they are. Don't make that first experience terrible, because I've seen a lot of people be turned off by having a bad first time.
Yes. Yep. Yeah,
You
I
know,
I second that 100%. And people talk about set and setting a lot when it comes to mushrooms, but that applies just as much to cannabis. And you definitely want to be in a place where you feel safe and you're comfortable. And I think a lot of people underestimate, if you've never smoked weed before, you can literally take a puff, wait and see how you feel, and then go from
take it.
there. But a lot of
Yeah.
times that's all it takes is like one puff. And you might feel like, if you're brand new, you might feel something. In fact, sometimes that's all it takes for me.
I'll tell you
I'm
what,
a
after
real
the tea break, I took one puff and I'm like I felt it immediately. I was like,
right.
whoa,
Yeah.
yeah, this is what I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does. Yeah. So the start low and go slow definitely applies to that too. And just the set and setting, like you want to be in a place that's comfortable. If I think as well, like my worst nightmare would be like trying weed for the first time at a concert or something like
Yeah,
that. Like,
where
I don't know.
especially if you have anxiety to begin with, and then you do that, because one thing I've noticed tremendously now is that cannabis will do this thing where it makes you second guess yourself. It makes you
Oh, yeah.
anxious
Yeah.
about the stupidest stuff that you wouldn't have even felt anxious about. And then you're like, oh, wait, is everybody going to think bad of me because I thought that or I said that? And so those are the thoughts that I struggle to deal with some days, because I'm like, no, no, stop. You're overthinking this. This isn't you thinking. So yeah, just definitely making people as comfortable as possible for your first time is the best thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, also, is there anything that you would like to know about cannabis, but you were afraid to ask?
And what's funny about that is I just bought a book called Weed and Everything You're Too Stoned to Ask.
Okay, that's cool.
I haven't gotten to a chance to read it, but I'm not afraid to ask anything about the plant because I'm a scholar at heart and I love to learn. But I'm more curious on growing strains that aren't THC dominant, like we just touched on.
Right.
That's the big thing that I want to know more about cannabis, is working with these other um I don't, I'm not, because like I don't know if you can use the word chemical compound. It's not a chemical, but these compounds in the plant, these different compounds that aren't just CBD and THC. I want to be able to grow these other strains that have all of these different qualities, because I was listening to Mackie's interview with the Swan lady. I think that's her name. She does the herbal medicines. When you combine cannabis with other herbs, it brings out other potencies of the other terpenes in cannabis that it wouldn't otherwise be able to put out on its own.
Oh, interesting. So is she growing them like together somehow?
So
Or
think of it as a sachet.
right.
Okay. When you're taking herbal medicines, you have a certain ways that you can do this. So, like if you were making a topical salve, throwing
Mhm.
rosemary and other
Right.
things like that are going to help bring out the CBD and things like that in that salve. So it
Right.
all comes down to not just cannabis has terpenes, every plant has
Yeah.
terpenes.
Yeah.
Everything has terpenes, your fruits, your vegetables. It's finding the giant concoction of the certain terpenes that we need, in either ingesting it, smoking it, drinking it, or suppositories. Just any way that you can get it into your bloodstream. That's what medicine is it's a
Mhm.
combination of all of these different things that you've taken, and it's your medicine. That's why I love herbal medicine. It's so cool, it's so fun, it makes me happy,
Yeah.
to do this thing on for yourself, and to help other people to not you like I just found out today that one of the medicines I take, if I stop taking it altogether, I could get this syndrome where my skin can slough off. And I'm like, oh. And my psychiatrist goes, yeah, but there's also a lot of medications that we do for people that could happen. We just don't tell people. I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh,
that's
wow.
great.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that is great.
so I'm definite like I do those because I have the chemical imbalance in my brain, so I need those sort of medicines. But if I had the opportunity and the time and the place and just to experiment and research the more medicinal side, I would go that route. But it's
Right.
just not available to me right now.
Yeah.
So you work
Now,
with what you got.
as far as like growing CBD cannabis, like CBD dominant cannabis, I would assume that it's like the same exact process. Yeah.
I would. So when I was looking at Royal Queen Seeds Seed Bank, they
Hmm.
have CBD and CBG specific strains,
Hmm.
and they just say that they're feminized, blah 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 strains. So I would assume that you would grow it just like any other cannabis plant. It's
Yeah.
still cannabis,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, exactly. It's just not going to have the same psychoactive effects, or sorry, intoxicating effects. I always like to correct myself because CBD is psychoactive. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be using it, right? Because like a lot of
right,
people find it helps reduce anxiety or it like helps with sleep or all these things. That's because it is psychoactive, but it's not
right.
intoxicating. So
Right.
yeah,
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 yeah, and that's again, we also have to break that stigma. I don't think it's so much as a stigma problem as it is an uneducated problem. The
yeah,
more we can educate people and not be uneducated ourselves when trying to explain this, that's going to help us in the long run, is trying to understand this ourselves so we can try to get others to understand it will help break that stigma on its own.
right. Yeah. And I think that takes, like you said earlier, that takes time just because we've been fed so many lies and there's still stigma that exists. And it takes time for people, especially for like a lot of people who aren't really in this space or like really involved. I mean, that's why it takes so long because a lot of people are like, well, I don't really care. It doesn't affect me that much. But over time, people will come to see the cannabis plant probably just like any other medicine or herb or whatever. It may not be
I
in our
hope.
lifetime, but that would be nice.
I hope,
Yeah.
because and where it's hopefully going to be looked at again in the US about being, reclassified. I'm excited. There's the whole divide of people out there that are like, yeah, but the plant's going to be able to be researched and get the dedication of research that it's been neglected for so long. Like, why can't we take the positive out of this instead of just looking at it as a negative?
Yeah, I totally agree. But this stuff, it seems like it always goes at a snail's pace, which is really annoying because
Yeah, well,
yeah,
the tortoise and the hare.
yeah, for
Sometimes
sure.
that's just the way it has to be.
Yeah. Now, just a couple more questions for you today. What would surprise people about you, Madison?
Uh, Honestly, that even though I appear like a pretty happy-go-lucky guy and that I'm doing great, I struggle with my own inner demons and self-doubt, feelings of not being able to do enough for my friends and family, and that's why I try hard at whatever it is I am doing, especially in the communities I put myself in. Um, yeah, and that I'm an empath and I feel and I care too much, and I do struggle with that a lot. So if you ever see me, and don't be afraid to say hi, because words mean a lot more than anything else. So
Yeah, and I think that's a nice reminder too that a lot of the times when we're out and about, people are struggling with shit that we have no idea. And it's always better to give people the benefit of the doubt because you don't know what that person is dealing with. It could be all kinds of things. And I think we need more empathy in this world, not less. Now, finally, so you were part of the Bite Me Cannabis Club. How has that experience influenced your cannabis journey?
you inspired me to take the break. I mean, without your community, I could not have been able to do this. They're such a great supporting community, um, and sometimes peer support's all you need just to make sure you're going. That's what made me keep going, is the you're doing great is such an uplifting feeling. The you're doing this, and that's why I try to do that for others so much, is because those little bit of words are so helpful to everybody in their everyday life. So I'm
Yeah.
just thankful for your community, because you inspired me to take the break. Your community helped me keep going. And you talk about some really amazing food. And so I do listen in from time to time when I get the chance. So for
I
letting me in.
appreciate you too. And just the commitment you made to yourself and to the community. I mean, but that was totally optional, but you made a commitment to yourself and you stuck with it. And I think, keeping commitments to yourself is a really valuable skill to hone. So I appreciate you showing up every day, and I appreciate you sharing your journey and a little bit more about yourself with me here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. If you could do one small thing for me right now, pull out your phone, share it with somebody that you think would also enjoy hearing Madison's story. If you're interested, you can be part of the conversation too. If you're a member of the Bite Me Cannabis Club, a listener of the show, I'd love to feature your cannabis journey in a future episode. It is a great way to share your own story, inspire others, and deepen your connection to the incredible Bite Me Cannabis community. With that, my friends, I'm your host, Margaret. Until next time, stay curious and stay high. Hey, friends and cannabis enthusiasts. Were you interested in the Fresh Start Tolerance Break program that I hosted in the Bite Me Cannabis Club, but January just wasn't the right time? But maybe you still feel like your tolerance is sky high and your favorite treats just aren't hitting the way they used to? Maybe it's time for that reset or recharge and to reconnect with cannabis in a whole new way, but on your own terms. Well, that's why I created the Fresh Start Complete 30-Day Tolerance Break program that's now available on Amazon in a paperback or Kindle format. And you may be asking, well, why take a tolerance break? And it's because life is too short for lackluster highs. If you're a daily consumer, this program is your ultimate guide to hitting the reset button and coming back stronger and higher than ever. And now it's even easier to get started. So what's inside the guide? It's the complete 30-day step-by-step plan that I had in the community to make your break smooth, successful, and even fun. It also has the daily check-ins and the 30-day habit tracker, or 31 days. If you're still looking for some community support, you're always welcome to join us over at the Bite Me Cannabis Club, where you'll find encouragement, shared experiences, and a lot of good vibes. So if you're ready to dive in, no matter what time of year or even for how long, grab your copy of the Fresh Start Complete 30-Day Tolerance Break program on Amazon. You can just search for the title or follow the link in the show notes. Why wait? I learned so much from doing my own tolerance break, and I know if you take a break from your own cannabis consumption, even for a short period of time, you'll learn a lot too. So go check out the Fresh Start Complete 30-Day Tolerance Break program. And with that, my friends, let's get into today's episode.